Last night, Republicans passed a major tax cut bill that's going to make the rich richer. It's not like Donald Trump didn't say that he was going to do this on the 2024 campaign trail.
Because you're all people that have a lot of money. I know 20 of you, and you're rich as hell. We're going to give you tax cuts. We're going to pay off our debt.
And if that wasn't enough evidence for you, back in 2017 when Donald Trump was president last, one of the first things that the Republicans in Congress did was not help the middle class, but it was to pass a major tax cut for the rich. If you made over $400,000 a year, you were included in those tax cuts. And now we're back here again, once again in 2025, where the rich get richer. They get another big break here, and this time it's Medicaid, SNAP, food stamps, and free school lunches, among other government assistance programs that are going to take a hit from this. After a 9-4 vote in the House committee, the bill advanced to the House floor, where there was much debate against this, including Democrats calling Republicans out directly. Watch.
We're no. Democrats are no on this budget. It is outrageous that you all have the audacity to come here with this budget that harms so many Americans and ask us to support billionaires and think we're going to buy it? You think we're going to support it? Well, you got another thought coming. We ain't doing it.
Imagine what the Republican reaction would have been if Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, or Joe Biden said, we're going to borrow $4 trillion more for these tax cuts for the wealthiest amongst us. Don't kid yourself. Medicaid, 71 million Americans, Medicare, Social Security, the American people depend upon these issues. I'm stunned that Republicans would borrow $4 trillion to justify tax cuts for the wealthiest amongst us. And by the way, people who aren't even asking for those tax cuts. Their cuts will affect every part of American life, including those who need basic sustenance every day.
As the House prepares to vote on a truly horrifying Republican budget resolution, one void of empathy or common sense, I'm thinking of and censoring the people in my district who stand to be harmed the most. Families in Mattapan who receive their health care through Mass Health, the Medicaid program for Massachusetts. Mothers in Chelsea who rely on SNAP to feed their babies. Disabled veterans in Randolph who receive life-saving care and benefits through the VA. Families in Roxbury who rely on Head Start for child care. This Republican majority said they'd spend the next 2 years cutting costs for the middle class, but the only thing they're cutting is trillions of dollars from life-saving programs our communities depend on to make ends meet. Mr. Speaker, this has never been about efficiency. Tell me how it is efficient to make people across this country sicker, hungrier, poorer, more vulnerable. Tell me how it is efficient to buy more toy rockets for Donald Trump's billionaire friends while parents can't afford groceries. The cruelty is the point. What a callous shame and a sham.
That's it. That's the agenda. And let's look at the scale of what they're sacrificing. Funding that feeds 15 million children, a program that pays for half of all the births in America, a service that keeps nursing homes and health centers' doors open, all to cut Elon's taxes.
You heard that right. Republicans want to make it harder for hungry children to eat. Republicans also refuse to join me in supporting Medicaid. It provides health coverage to 72 million Americans, including over 300,000 Rhode Islanders. That's not a typo. Republicans are putting the needs of billionaires above the needs of ordinary Americans. If that isn't a betrayal, I don't know what is. I yield back.
Who do you think you are fooling? And they are not fooled by your notion that somehow these tax cuts are going to pay for themselves.
I'm going to now show you this clip here, and I feel it's important to show this clip because this is a mother of a newborn baby here who was on maternity leave but had to fly into Congress because Republicans would not allow her to do a voice vote, which is essentially something that has been done in the past by multiple members of Congress. Republicans even have done voice votes in the past, and basically what it is it's It's a congressional norm. It's basically where you can vote on an amendment or a bill without actually being in the building. And so I want to show you this specifically because of what she says about this bill as she's holding her newborn baby here. He's only 4 weeks old. Watch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with my newborn Sam, who's just 4 weeks old. Unfortunately, I wasn't given the opportunity to vote remotely after giving birth, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from being here to represent my constituents and vote no on this disastrous Republican budget proposal. Republicans and Trump promised to lower costs on day one, and instead their priorities have been focused on ripping health care away from kids, seniors, moms, and others who need it most. And this is not going to save money. It includes people like my mom who work for hourly wages but are still unable to afford health care. When you don't have access to health care, you show up in the ER. This is going to have a huge burden on our hospitals and unfortunately will have skyrocketing costs. I agree, Sam. Hospitals will bear this burden. It also slashes SNAP, taking food off the plates for seniors, veterans, and kids, all to fund tax breaks for billionaires like Elon Musk while increasing our national deficit by trillions of dollars. How can anyone show their face in their district after voting yes for this? Thank you. I yield back.
Once again, to be clear, this is a mother of a newborn child who could have done a voice vote. And Republicans made her come to Congress, made her fly in to come to Congress. Just let that sink in for a second when we talk about the iteration of the party that is in control right now. That is how out of touch they are. I want to read you this here, an analysis from the CBP, the Centers on Budget and Policy Priorities. And it talks about how this major tax cut for rich people will result in, quote, widespread harm and affect 9 million low-income Americans. Reads here, quote, deep SNAP cuts would worsen food insecurity, hurt local businesses, and weaken SNAP's abilities to boost jobs in every state. SNAP is highly effective at reducing food insecurity and poverty, and research links SNAP participation to better health outcomes and lower healthcare costs, regardless of how lawmakers impose $230 billion or more in cuts to SNAP. These cuts would make it harder for low-income families in every state to afford groceries, worsening food insecurity and hardship. Slashing low-income households' grocery budgets would also reduce revenue for thousands of businesses in every state, with ripple effects through the food supply chain. The enormous cuts this budget calls for would increase cost, hardship, and poverty for individual families across the country. To be clear, the specific proposals that House Republicans have been considering for weeks to make these programs cuts are largely not about curbing fraud and abuse, as some claim. For example, proposals to cap federal funding, shift costs to states, or impose harsh work environments that trip people up with red tape are aimed at cutting health coverage and food assistance for honest people who need help, not reducing fraud. And the impact of these cuts would be grave. Think of a person who loses health care coverage through Medicaid and can't get cancer treatment, an older and frail adult who loses the home-based care they need to stay out of an institution, a young adult who can't get insulin to control their diabetes, a parent who skips meals so their children can eat, or an older worker who loses their job and has no way to buy groceries. Make no mistake, these cuts would affect people in every state and of all races and ethnicities. At the same time, the impacts would often be especially severe in poorer states with less ability to fill in for federal cuts and among Black, Latino, and Indigenous people and people in rural communities who have lower incomes and thus are more likely to qualify for food assistance and healthcare coverage. End quote. I do want to speak about that for a second because you consider people who are in poorer states. What does that look like? Red states, Republican states. Republicans benefit the most from government assistance programs, just like they benefit the most from the ACA, which is Obamacare. And they are also going to be heavily impacted by this. Those are Republicans. Those are Trump supporters who are going to be heavily impacted by the fact that they are on SNAP, the fact that they are on Medicaid. And of course, essentially, this comes at a time where we must give credit to the CBPP because they have done incredible analysis on this bill. I encourage you to read their work on their website. They also cite horrifically here, as I just aforementioned, with Republicans being in some of the poorest states in the country. They also mention here that more than 36 million Americans could be put at risk of losing their health care coverage with these Republican tax cuts. Because, of course, this comes at a time when RFK Jr., the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, said that most Americans aren't happy with Medicaid. Therefore, Mehmet Oz, you're about to lead the center, so do we want to privatize Medicare and Medicaid? Oh, what would that do for your pockets? Oh, it would put more money into your pockets. I see. That's why we should privatize Medicare and Medicaid, so effectively dismantle it for everybody else. But if you're rich and you can afford it, if you're not rich, good luck getting cancer treatment. I mean, it's not like people didn't see this coming. Project 2025 specifically has initiatives that not only destroys the federal government, which they call the administrative state, but it also ends federal assistance programs in healthcare as we know it, effectively. I mean, at a time like this, where everything is so dystopian and is so dark, you do ask the question, is there hope? What can we do in this moment? Well, I mean, not really. If you look at this here, this is the makeup of the current Congress right now. And you see that the House is Republican, held with a very thin majority. And yeah, this bill passed, but it passed quite barely. Yesterday, all Democrats and one Republican voted against this. And so basically what happens now is that this is going to go to the Senate for a vote where it is expected to face another uphill battle from Democrats being so loud and clear in the resistance here. And they are in the minority. So effectively, they won't be able to stop this. Because deceiving headlines, but they won't be able to stop this in the sense of this passing through Congress. But there is a way for them to sound the alarm about this. And they should be sounding the alarm. Because what Republicans are trying to do here is paint this as something else, with deceiving headlines like this from the GOP's website. The House effectively saying here that, yeah, we're doing this for working hard families like you. We're delivering on President Trump's campaign promises. Let's be clear what this is. This is a big tax cut for the rich, while slashing government assistance programs that millions of Americans rely on, depend on, each and every day. We're talking about SNAP benefits. Benefits for a working mother, single mother, who is trying to make ends meet while working at a job, 8 hours a day, picking up her kids, trying to go to the grocery store and afford groceries on top of an already debilitating, extremely high rent. That's what this is going to do. The CBPP estimates that about 36 million Americans effectively could be cut off of Medicaid. And more than 9 million Americans could be affected in regard to losing government assistance programs in regard to SNAP. A kid in line at school waiting to get free lunch because it is offered through government assistance, now having to starve through the whole school day because Republicans in the House think it's a great idea to cut off all of this for the less unfortunate in this country, and let's give a bigger tax cut to the rich, even bigger than we did in 2017. Because, of course, they need the money more than a little kid who's starving in school, and a mother who is trying to make ends meet, or a father who is trying to make ends meet while saving to get grocery money for his kids. This is the Republican Party. This is Donald Trump. And more than 77 million Americans voted for him and enabled it. Therefore, this is on your hands. This is on your watch. This is on you. These major tax cuts here, absolutely indefensible. Indefensible. What did the CBPP say again? This is going to have, quote, widespread harm. Just watch. Watch as the horrific stories start coming out in the United States with these major tax cuts that are going to help the rich, but not only hurt the less advantaged in this country, but hurt them in a way that is debilitating, and it is absolutely horrific. We should be clear-eyed about that.